It's the track.
Okay, recording the podcast Saturday, April the 18th here in Portland, Oregon. Shane Rhodey, the stately Shane Rhodey, holding down the fort, Track Stitch HQ, Auckland, New Zealand. Shano, how you doing?
Been called a lot of things, Jason, and never stately, but I'll take it.
You know the reference there too, right? The stately Steve Cram, remember that one?
Yes.
With the high knees.
Again, there's not a lot of similarities, but I'll take it.
Your lyrical or your grammatical ability is similar to the running form, the high stepping stately form of Steve Cram.
A lyrical waxicist.
A waxicist. A waxer of something. All right, Shano, let's dive right into things. I just sprung this on you. Bryan Clay meet is happening here on the West Coast, SoCal of the United States. Some pretty interesting results coming through, especially from last night. One guy in particular that I know we've had some deliberation on in the past, Colin Sahlman, seems to have found a bit of a niche in the 800 meters, even though, of course, he won the indoor title over 3,000 meters at the NCAA Championships. Last night, new PR, 144.42. He's running the 1,500 tonight. But this sort of begs an interesting question. You know, he's sort of struggled oddly over 1,500 meters at NCAA championship level. He was 4th in 2024, 7th last year. And I think he missed the final in his first year as a freshman. What are your thoughts when you hear about Sahlman running 144.4? And is the 800 actually his best event?
A couple of comments. So, cruising speed, our own Nick Willis was the master of this, and a lot of those top milers they're not particularly phenomenal over 800 or 3,000 or 5,000, but they've got this beautiful flowing efficient gait at 55, 56, 57 speed. I just wonder, Sahlman, whilst he's got a little bit less jutty in his action, looks still a little bit laboured, even though he's a total phenomenon. So maybe it plays to that. The other thing though is I don't think we should be too prejudicial or quick to judge his 1,500, because I believe we're seeing a new Colin Sahlman this year. What I remember when we watch all these guys, they're all kids. And, I saw like the last few years, he obviously was a precocious high schooler, one of the most precocious in US history. Yeah. Then he looked sort of, when you see him on the start line or after, he looked kind of a little bit out of sorts. So maybe he was going through that whole becoming a man thing and had to find his bearings in the world. But now he looks a lot more composed. He looks a lot more like a Cole Hocker or a Nagusi. He looks like he's matured, and he's, as a result, become more consistent. So
it's like he's grown into his frame, right?
Grown into his frame, looks stronger. The form looks a bit smoother. He looks, like I said, a lot physically stronger. So perhaps we're seeing a new Colin Sahlman. It's exciting. It's great. I'm rooting for him.
Exactly. I mean, you would think a guy with his chops over cross country, and obviously he was always very good over 800 as well. I think he'd run 145 mid even a couple of years ago, would be much better over that 1,500. He just hasn't been able to put it together. I am interested, though, to see what he will focus on outdoors at NCAA level, because I still wonder, and we've seen this in the world, even at like the highest level now, these guys who can even time trial great 1,500s, it doesn't necessarily translate. Like this gap between, time trialing an 1,500 and racing a 1,500 has never been bigger than now, mostly because of the way the training has changed. All these factors we've spoken about them ad nauseum before. So I just wonder if NCAA 1,500 meters, which is notorious for being these races of, pace up, pace down, slow, fast, a lot of jostling. I wonder if it just doesn't suit him and he should actually focus on the 800, because I've got a feeling that the way that we've seen the NCAA 800s run traditionally, there's always someone who's going to take it out in around 51 flat, 51.5. I just feel like it's perfect for Sahlman. Like last night, that was very similar to the race because I had a quick look at it. He went through in 52 flat. He worked his way up slowly through the field and then just so much stronger using that 3,000 meter / 1,500 meter endurance to just dominate those guys. And I just wonder if the 800 is his best event, but we'll see. He's running the 15 tonight, so that could
be precedent. There's precedent for it. I mean, Ko was a distance runner as a high schooler, and like Ko, he has that nippy, quick change of speed, and also with that aerobic strength. If he, all these guys, the main goal is to win championships. So in the 800, as you know, Jason, having competed in those events yourself, the whittling down of the contenders through the rounds suits a guy like Sahlman. If he can survive rounds in the 800, get in a final, it's very high probability that a final during the, what we're going to call it, the sort of life expectancy of his career could dawdle through 400, at which point the stronger guys come on better. So he could absolutely win a global championship with his tool set, with his kit set. So he's good.
Another action as well. That was a big positive, Sahlman's performance there. Another 800-meter athlete that we've sort of noticed over the years, maybe not quite living up to their potential since turning pro. Oh, man. Doesn't bring me too much joy to bring up this result, but I did see it. I thought it was noteworthy. Michaela Rose, 2:00.93, and I saw first lap of 57.89. So that means we're going 57.89, 63.03, a massive difference. Once again, Shane just doesn't seem to be able to put it together.
I think the reason you're exasperated is just to how do I put this? Elaborate for the vast viewership out there, is that we're not condemning her because she's not running 156 or 155. We're condemning her because, or Jason right now is condemning her, but I do agree with him because she actually has what it takes to be a superstar. Okay. She's a lot of these other women. You look at Rasheen Willis or Juliet Whittaker, they are nowhere near as talented as her, but they're mature, well put together young ladies who have thought about what they're doing. They're consistent in their approach, how they race. Michaela Rose is a much more talented athlete than both of those women I just named. Dare I say it, she's probably one of the most talented women in the world. If a Georgia Hunter Bell can run 154.9, Vero Hodgkinson, she's got the tools to be in the same breath as those athletes. There's no reason she shouldn't be a 156 runner already. And in fact, I think her ceiling is actually better than a lot of those others, except perhaps maybe Keely or Vero. So that's the frustration, isn't it, Jason?
Totally. No, this is not a criticism of her talent. This is just exasperation that since turning pro, and I don't know who's handling her or looking after her, it just does not seem to be working out. We talk, we had our discussions over Cole Hocker and his tactics of, almost insanity and doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results and not getting them. Just seems to be a little bit of the same with Rose here. It's always the same formula. It is out way too hard in the first lap. It is a massive implosion. I don't know at what point does the camp there start saying this is just not working, because Jano, 158.27 as a college sophomore, so second year at college, 158.27, and we're just going backwards here.
She wasn't strong when she did that either. As in terms of her ceiling is a lot higher than that.
And so to that point, you almost feel like she could have just been continuing to do what she was doing to get to that level, and just natural strength of age and growing up and just running more races should have accelerated things, like you were saying, down into that 156 potential zone right now. But I just saw that result and I was like, oh man, I was a bit bummed out, because again, I'm a big believer in her talent, and just
as we know, Jason, just as the converse of what we're talking about with Colin Sahlman, we don't know what's going on in an athlete's life and their psyche and their personal relationships, their relationship with their family. Like, there's a whole lot more going into it than that. And the great Percy Sarati's quote was, he'd said he'd seen so many ways to train an Olympic champion that he was now convinced that it was what they did off the track was more important than what they did on it. So it may be the coaching is fine, and it may be that I'm sure it's more speed based, but there's plenty of examples in history of speed based successful 800 meter runners. In fact, I read a great article many moons ago, when I was an aspiring young buck myself, saying that the reason why, it was Arch Jelly actually, or Maureen's bridge partner.
Listen to this. We're getting Percy Karate or Sarati quotes. We've got Arch Jelly quotes. This is why you come to the Track Stitch podcast.
The creme de la creme, just dipping into the suitcase of knowledge all those years in the library when I had no friends at Auckland Grammar School reading track and field news. So Arch Jelly wrote a great article saying that whilst Lydiardism had provided us with, a rich history of middle distance champions, it's also stuffed us as a nation in the 800 meter. I'm talking about New Zealand here, by the way, for the viewers. It's stuffed us in the 800 because there's very few, if any, examples of like Lydiard style or distance focused 800 meter runners. And because also the Lydiardism doctrine has been bastardized or diluted or misunderstood, where people think just long, slow running is going to build a great 800 meter runner. We haven't had until recently. We've got a few guys who are pretty good, another Peter Snell. And so a lot of the 800 meter runners in history, and this, Jason, are a lot more speed based, so to speak, or not as much mileage. So, that's an interesting point to consider as well. It may not be how she prepares. It may be just more her and what's going on in her life, which is, everyone's prone to that stuff.
Well, unfortunately, if it is that, it's been going on for a while because, feel like she's under-indexing on that massive talent. Moving forward, though, back to positivity. Jane Hedengren, Big Red, 1450 dominates the 5,000 meters there last night. That's just a little bit off her PR, but now she's starting, as you've spoken about in the past, Shane, how important it is to stack those good performances together in order to make the next step. So this is now a couple of, 1450 or better performances, multiple across the beginning of the outdoor season, also indoors. So she's looking good. And Tom Samuel, the man who, of course, was famously disqualified in that NCAA indoor 3,000 meters, giving Colin Sahlman the victory. He ran 13:03 last night, which I believe is an NCAA record because there are some interesting rules about where those performances need to be set. So, yeah. Anything on Hedengren or Tom Samuel there?
I don't want to turn this into a negative podcast after we talked about Michaela Rose. No, we're 1-1, aren't we? We talked about our mate Salmon. We talked about the disappointment of Michaela Rose, or our disappointment in Michaela Rose's lack of progress. With these very good women, young US women like Hedengren and Parker Valby, the difficulty they've got is they're not fast, or they're not zippy in the way a Debaba or some of these other African women. And to do with Hassan, with the exception of Emily Infeld, who got that bronze, and who else? Shalane did pretty well. Yeah. And then who was the woman, Molly Huddle, that got out-leaned a bit gormlessly? And that's credible to get those global medals, but the Africans have come on a lot since then. So a Hedengren type, while she is incredible, she's going to have to get down to sort of low 29s. And even if she can do that, it's very difficult then to shake those in the same way we saw over the men's over the years, Jason, like you've talked about with the steeples, that extra gear, that Cole Hocker type extra gear that only the Africans were able to tap into. So I think for Hedengren, if I was Jane Hedengren, I would, this might sound like a hot take, but I would, or attempted hot take, I'd actually go to the roads really, really young if I was Jane Hedengren. I'm not. That's not a derogatory comment. But in terms of your career,
that's a very hot take, though.
No, well, okay. You show me. You show me why where her path is to winning global medals over the 5.
Well, I don't know yet, but she is only a college freshman, so it's like first year in college. So I don't know. I mean, I do fundamentally agree with you. We've got a lot of evidence of this, of just these, even pace grinders who can just, almost bludgeon their opponents. Certainly at the NCAA level, it works. I don't really know, but
sorry, when I said go to the roads, I didn't mean she should give up on the track now. Far from it.
Okay. All right.
But what I meant was her Diljit or whatever her name is they should be thinking not a bit like who was the really good guy on the men's side, Connor Mance. They should be thinking not far from here that, like a Sebastian Saw type, or back in the day, and Renata Canova talked about it at length on the message boards back in the day. Back in the day, the model was you do your track career and the roads kind of became a battleground for the guys in the track, the stars who had decided, okay, I can't crack this. Track was
Right.
it. The money was and the attention was. Now, because of the worldwide running boom, the halves and marathons, they're big money. Not that life's all about money, but it certainly helps to have a nice life. And there is a huge amount of attention on it. So if I was preparing her, coach and manager, I'd be thinking, keep it going. Yep. But then not too far distant future, I'd be thinking, what can we get her to run for a half marathon and get her to compete in an Olympic marathon? Paula Radcliffe would be the good blueprint.
There you go. Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Yep.
Good hot take, though. I mean, that's gonna cause a stir with the tens and tens of fans of the Track Stitch podcast. Speaking of causing a stir, Shano, I asked a question 2 weeks ago that I have to apologize for. You got something to apologize to because you walked out of the stadium.
Oh,
2 weeks ago, for all the fans of the podcast, I asked the question, was Gout Gout actually good? And that came after the Maury Plant meet. Over 200 meters where he showed up, he was beaten by Lachlan Kennedy yet again. I think he ran like 20.4. Pretty underwhelming. It was so underwhelming that you actually didn't even bother to stick around and you were there in the stadium. And then as we get off air, within 12 hours, as always happened, Gout Gout runs 19.67, the 19.67 with a plus 1.7 wind. It is the new world leader. It is a world junior record, faster than Usain Bolt. So I have to apologize, Shane. I asked if Gout Gout was good. It was a little bit facetious in the question because, of course, and ironic, of course he's good, but there is a second element to this. He's obviously very, very good, so I have to eat my words a little bit. Pretty crazy race there, though, Shano. And just to preface this as well, our good friends over at letsrun.com, including Jonathan Galt, got themselves in a bit of strife for potentially questioning this race. Not really the legitimacy of the race. They were just asking the question, is it not weird that an entire field were able to set massive PRs, including, let me get my stats right here, man in second place, Aidan Murphy, 19.88. He's a 400-meter runner, about half a second off his PR. He's only just behind Wade Van Niekerk now, Mo Green on the all-time list. But listen to this one. This was from the Australian Herald. A quote, "The skeptics were mostly US-based and included trolling influencers looking to harvest strong traffic attached to Gout and Lachlan Kennedy, but also some legitimate athletics writers and analysts. Former Olympic 100-meter gold medalist and drug cheat Justin Gatlin later weighed in, saying he doubts would remain about Gout until he performed outside of Australia."
Did you just say Gouts would remain about Gout or doubts would remain about Gout?
Doubts,
D and the G are very similar
doubts would
sound.
remain about Gout, or Gouts would remain about
Gouts
Gout.
would remain about doubt.
Doubt, yeah. You get the drift. Anyway, Shano, 19.67 in that Australian final. Do you still have any doubts about Gout?
Gout is good. There's no question.
Yes.
So, I mean, and I'm very niche with a niche. That's why I didn't stay for his race. It was pissing with rain, and I'd already made the pilgrimage over there to watch my middle distance races, and I wanted to get back to the hotel and have a nice little meal. But no, Gout's very good. In terms of that race, I mean, the elephant in the room, calling out the obvious. Jason is definitely more conservative and cynical than I am in his takes. When he first ran it, Jason messaged me on our little group chat with a bunch of us chumps and said, I don't know, over this and that. My first reaction is always like, you just got to sometimes just something is what it is on the face of it. I've got to admit this time, after looking into it myself, reading Jonathan Galt's, I thought, excellent piece on it, that, yeah, I mean, it's either a big prevailing sort of crosswind, or I don't think it's the timing. I mean, I looked at the timing. I'm sure you did too, Jason. Yeah, I mean, the shame of humans is we're very good at polarizing our opinions, almost always to give life to our own biases. So what I mean by that is all the people in the Gout camp, including Australia as a nation, and say their newspapers, want to believe he's run 19.67 in equalized conditions where that wind rating can be taken on the face of it as uniform across state meets, which I know isn't possible, but there are degrees which that can be true and not true. Then you've got the people who, I saw some very emotive sprinter guy. What's that guy's name? With the funny name. It's a sort of a unisex name. You know, the guy I'm talking about, the sprinter that who's been hypercritical and was all this vitriol. Aaron Brown. This is it's all expletive laden and it's a load of nonsense.
He hates New Zealanders and Australians.
Yeah, so you've got these polarized views of it was 1967. Don't you dare doubt it. Anyone that's doing it like ourselves is trying to drive traffic. Then you've got the people saying, no way is legit. I'm sort of somewhere in the middle. Those guys he beat, I mean, the guy that beat him that previously a few times is very, very good. I think it's probably worth a 1990 or something like that, which it's a shame that actually there's that controversy, because if he'd run 1990 or 1983 or something like that, and there was no doubt and the rest of the field had kind of performances in keeping with their normal level, then there wouldn't be this controversy around or cynicism around whether he ran that fast. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I think in defense of my good buddy John Galt, I don't think he was calling into question the legitimacy of the race, and especially not the performance of Gout Gout, because this is sort of the performance that I think we've been expecting to see from somebody with so much hype and so much talent, right? And certainly Adidas have invested a lot of money into him, so they believe that he's going to be the next big thing. I think the bigger question was, it's very, very rare that in a final, like an Australian Championships or just any kind of final, that you have almost the entire field set massive PRs the way that they did. Now, I think the only thing we can chalk it up to is just a sort of a once in a decade situation where everything aligned. The race just sort of played out perfectly for everybody in it. I think there's no doubt, obviously, a 1.7 tailwind in any track race, 100 meters or 200 meters, is very advantageous. And there's certainly a possibility that depending on the wind direction, some people believe it's coming in from the other side, so there couldn't have been a wind on the bend. However, if you've ever been to SIAC, the Sydney International Athletic Centre, you'll know that Stadium Australia, the massive Stadium Australia, is right behind the 100-metre point. So there is a possibility that any prevailing wind that's coming from the north or northwest can swirl, coming on the track in different angles. There is a possibility that there was some assistance on that curve. Either way, it's legal, 1.7. I think just the point was, it is rare and it is unusual for everybody in a race to run so well simultaneously at the same time. But, Shano, the question, is Gout Gout good? Here's another one for you, though. This is the other angle to this. We've talked about this on the pod before, too. In particular, in sprints, there is massive advantage to, for example, knowing you are the best in the field, knowing that at no point in the race you have to tense or have to sort of strain or push to make moves or potentially win the race. And we don't see this with Gout Gout in Australia because he's so much better than everybody else. He runs a lot of junior races. He's running at the Australian Nationals. He is the best talent. The real acid test for him now moving forward is going to be when he is put under pressure in big European meets. Can he replicate this kind of form, or is he going to do what we have seen in the past where he tends to, fall apart like the old Porsche engine in the Toyota Corolla and unbolt and send arms and legs flying into the front row of the grandstand? That's going to be the big test for him moving forwards, I think.
Yeah, your big champions are not just champions in their body, they're champions in their mind, their spirit, whatever you want to call it. So a Bolt had the self-belief, that calmness on the start line and that charisma of a big champion, because he believed in his heart of hearts he was better than everybody else, and he wasn't for a long time until he, but he believed it. He still acted like it. That's the hurdle for a Gout Gout. Is he going to be, if he's going to be an all-time great, he's going to have to, and that's the fascination around him, because right now he's raw talent, and that race may not be a good thing for him, in the sense of now it's created an expectation where if he can't, but I'll tell you one thing, man, like, how exciting for, he's an Australian. It's bringing track. That meet I went to, Maury Plant, was nothing like in our day in terms of the people there, the kids, like heckling for autographs, Bruce McAvaney commentating. What a great time for athletics anywhere in the world, but particularly, say, in Australia right now. And I'm rooting for him. It's I didn't stay to watch his race, but I'm rooting for him. And I think that he has got that whole underdog persona, in terms of he's not coming from, say, the US or the West Indies. So can this guy come from a nation like Australia and challenge the world's best? And it brings all the Aussie fans into it. So overall, I think it's a really, really good thing. It's been made difficult by the fact that he's now got the expectation. But people like Justin Gatlin and coming out and making, I don't really know what the point of those comments are. I mean, there's self-evident comments, and it just comes across as jealousy, that, you basically want to put someone like that down. Well, what's to gain from that? Saying, oh, it's good, but let's see him do it over, and there's nothing to gain from that.
Yeah, it's more just an interesting, right? Like,
no, I didn't mean you saying that. I mean, because I think it's true.
No, I think they're calling into question the legitimacy of the performance, and also performances down under. And I think that there's this undertone that the wind was stronger than it was supposed to be.
They can say what they're like. I mean, a retired champion with a drug bust, no less, coming out and going, oh yeah, but let's see him do it. Like what's he gaining? What's Justin Gatlin gaining from saying that? I don't know.
I find that interesting too.
Because why wouldn't you just be like, if you're a true fan and lover of the sport and you've made your money and won your titles, why wouldn't you just say, it's really exciting to see this guy come through and see if we could take the records further? But I suppose that's not what drives certain people. So,
guess not. Yeah. All right. Well, apologies in the bag to Gout Gout. He is extremely good, but at least I'm interested to see what he's going to run this upcoming European season, especially when he gets in races against the likes of Noah Lyles, against the likes of Tobago. I think this may or may not be the case. I'm pretty sure it is. I think he's been announced in a 400-meter race, Shane, in one of the China Diamond Leagues that's upcoming, which is an interesting one, but that'll be interesting to watch too. I think he's going up against Tobago in that one, but either way, things trending up for Gout Gout. Finally puts together a performance that I guess is reflective of the talent that everybody thought that he always has. And also shout out to, what was his name again? In second place, Aidan Murphy, 1988. That's an awesome performance, especially for, I'll say it, a white dude from Australia. That was a pretty awesome performance. Shano, next topic. One of the greats of all time, one of our favorites, Jakob Ingebrigtsen. There has been some chatter recently as the recovery of Jakob sort of gathers a bit of steam. Talk out of his camp that potentially the European Championships later this year would be the comeback. Interesting question, Shano, on the boards of our favorite track and field website, letsrun.com. On the day that Jakob ran 7:17, which for now, and we're hoping it's not going to be his career peak shape, but certainly it's sort of not a stretch to say that this particular period in 2024 was. Of course, he ran 3:26.7 for 1,500 meters, won the Olympic 5,000 meters, front ran a 3:28.3 in the Olympics, and then, of course, 7:17.5 for 3,000. Would he have broken the 5,000 meter record, Shano?
Can you
This
tell
is a
me?
real interesting one because we're going to discuss about does he actually have the makeup to go after that record. But what do you think?
Can you tell me what the points are for the? Do you know that off the top of your head for the 5, the correlation?
What
For
do you
the
mean?
717. What side? What are the
Oh,
World Athletics points?
so I mean, it is way out of whack because, well, maybe it's not. So his 3,000 meter 717.55 is way ahead of any other performance that he has. And just to put it in context, even LG's 1,500 mile world record, they're about the 1,300 point barrier. And his 3,000, that 717 is like 1,320. And that is the equivalent of a sub 1230 5,000 meters. So it is way under the current world record of Joshua Cheptegei. It's obviously way under his PR too, but we know he can run faster. We assume he can run a lot faster than 12:48. But yeah, that 3,000 meters has always been a real outlier mark for whatever reason. I don't know, but that's, yeah, to answer your question, it translates to a 5,000 meters under 12:30. But
What's is it? 12:35, right?
12:35.36 or 34 is the current world record.
I just got to come out and say it. I don't know. Like, I'm very opinionated as you are, Jason. That's why we love doing this little show. But in terms of like doing all the analysis and then going back to your gut, then analysis, then gut, and then taking a line and sticking to it and advocating for it. But I don't know. Like my big thing is, why hasn't he had a crack at it? If he believed, say he thought he could run 12:30, he's not going to come up with egg on his face if he runs 12:38 because of it. I suspect possibly, I don't know this, but my gut says maybe he isn't as good at it as he maybe he knows he's not as good at it as people perhaps think. A la Mohamed Farah. Maybe Farah was the same. Maybe him and Salazar or whoever was coaching him after Salazar was like, you just can't get close. So why do it and then run 12:47? I'm talking about Farah here, and then end up being like, okay, well, you're clearly not in the GOAT argument. Just stick to winning your Olympic golds and World Champs golds. I don't know though. Maybe he can, and he's sort of had other priorities, or it just didn't come together. I just couldn't tell you. Put it this way, I definitely think he's a sub 12:40 runner.
I 100% agree with you on that. And even if we assume that the 3,000 meters was his best discipline, if you look at sort of the bookends to that 3,000 distance, which would be the 1,500, the mile, and the 5,000 meters, if he was obviously he is a 326, 343, 717 guy, that would probably put his 5K kind of in that 12:36 to 12:38 range. It's a really good question because obviously on the surface, Shano, you look at a performance like 717.
Yep.
And if you're going to run close to 12:30 for 5K, especially the way the guys are running the distance now, you're looking at going 7:30, approximately 7:30, 7:31, maybe 7:32 through 3,000 meters. That's 15 seconds off what the guy ran. So it would seem like logical and sensical that a 7:17 runner who has to go through on route in 7:30 should be able to do so quite comfortably and then run another 2,000 meters, right? But bear in mind that another 2,000 meters, that is basically 66% further than what a 3,000 meters is. And we have seen him run that 2 mile, right? So the difference between a 5K and a 2 mile is about 55% further. It's still significant. I think one of the reasons why there is this consensus that it would be so easy for him to do it as well are two things. It's that level over 3,000 meters and the fact that when we've seen him in these major championship races go up against guys like Hargos Gebrewet, Yomif Kajelka, like Gebrewet's 2 all-time, 12:36. He ran faster than Kenenisa Bekele. Kajelka's at 12:38, so he's only a second off Bekele. And we've seen Jakob absolutely destroy those guys. We've also seen him destroy Cheptegei in a 5,000 meters because he did in the Eugene 22 champs. I think we put those two things together and we just make this very basic on the surface correlation that yes, the 5,000 meter world record would have been an absolute formality and potentially a really quick time, in the low 12:30s, maybe even under. But here's the thing, Shano, I think you do know this because we've spoken about it. One of the key attributes of the 5,000 meter world record holders, when you look at them, Cheptegei, Bekele, Gebb, those guys, they've all been extremely good over 10,000 meters. They've all been the 10,000 meter world record holder simultaneously. The only guy that kind of bucks that trend is our guy, Daniel Coleman, right, who was more on that 1,500 mile side, 329 guy, 346 back in the 90s.
Although Coleman came from the 10,000
He did.
as a junior background.
He did.
World
yes,
yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
He world junior champion in Lisbon,
champion.
Right? Yeah, 28:20 as a junior.
Yep.
He did run 27:38 or 27 something as a senior, so he was pretty good over the 10.
Yep.
But when you look at that, so now I'm just trying to connect the dots, and the logic would suggest that Jakob probably needs to be about a 26:15 guy with his speed over 1,500 and over 3,000 meters to get that record, because it is just freaking tough. You have to be strong. You have to be so strong to be able to hang on for that extra 2,000 meters. Doesn't matter what your 3,000 meter time is. And I'm just not sure, Shano, if he's like a 26:15 10K guy.
How fast did Aragawi run over 5,000? Low 1240s, 1240?
Yeah, he must be about that level
and
too.
He was 721, wasn't he, in that race when Jakob ran?
Yes. And a cross monster, even though he hasn't really put together a 10K for some reason.
Yeah.
But,
so he's strong. He's strong, and he almost broke Coleman's old record. I mean, you've got Hocker and Fisher running high 722, 723 indoor. So that mythical 720 doesn't represent what it used to with the advent of faster time. So the 717, whilst on its face, coming from our era, looks like a massive aberration pointing to, say, a 1229 or 1230 in sort of fantasy land. Yeah, I don't know. It's, put it this way, if he ran 1233, I wouldn't be like, if I had a time machine go back, I wouldn't have been like exasperated by it. But at the same time, it's tough.
Yeah, I just wonder if, here's the thing. Are we underestimating that 1,500 meter performance from him? Right, because I think a lot of people are like, no, he's actually better over 5,000 meters and he's more of a 3.5 guy. I'm not really sure about that, man. 3:26.73, that puts him as one of only 4 with an asterisk because of Kiprop. So, I think we could probably safely say that puts him as one of only 3 humans who've ever run under 3:27 for the distance. And Shano, as much as we love that era and we love our guy LG, we do have to, kind of.
Well, there's no EPO test until the year 2000, right?
Yeah,
and
we did see
that originally was positive for EPO and it got overturned. So there's some shade around all those times, and why hasn't anyone even
come within half a second,
within a quarter of a century? So the 3:26.7, as you say. Once you give it some proper context, it's a pretty good chance it's close to as quick as anyone's ever run.
Yeah.
The other thing I just wanted to say about your comments around the 5,000 runners being informed from a 10,000 or cross-country distance background is that perhaps there's something in the particular mix of wave, light, training, shoes, and just the internal knowledge that these systems have around their athletes that makes running at that particular threshold, that 12:35, very, very difficult in a metronomic way. Perhaps it's not as easy as, and that's why they're sort of tapping out in that high 12:30s. Yeah. Of course, someone, we believe, don't we, Jason, with a 10,000 strength background, who's also like a Coleman type that comes down as they get as their career progresses in terms of realizing they had this latent speed or speed strength in there coming off that cross-country background. And that's what happened with all those great Kenyans over the years. They just do aerobic for years and years and years. They're very strong, and then they come down, so to speak, and they're channeling into that speed. Do I believe someone in the next decade, for example, could break 12:30 or around 12:32. Yeah, I do. But I think that in fact, I think that's more likely than someone running under 3:26.00. That with the way
Totally.
training is these days, I think a real super talent like a Bakili or a Coman or a Gebb coming through and shattering that record. Do I think that's going to be Jakob? Well, now that's an easy one. Now, because of reasons we've talked about, perhaps not. But 2020, 23 or 24, 23 or 24, Jakob, when he ran the 7:17, could he have done it? Yeah, 24. Okay, so yeah, I'm not so sure. Let's move on because we've talked about this one for ages, but it's a very interesting topic.
All right. Hey, well, one other topic that came up around that 5,000 meters. This is an exciting one for you because, as you said, we're just briefcases full of old knowledge. Was, what were the best or the most special championship 5,000 meter races that we've seen? Because I think there was sort of a case being built about why Jakob could get this world record because of the special nature of his 5,000 meter, global championships that we've seen. Obviously, he won in 22, he won in 23, and then he's the Olympic champion in 2024. It got me thinking, they were great performances from Jakob, in particular in 2023. He had the big 52.45 last lap battle with Katia. That's one of the fastest we've ever seen. In Paris in 2024, he closed, I think it was 7:35 flat for the last 3,000 meters. We'll talk about the significance of that in a second. But just want to do a bit of a rundown, Shano. Did you have any great 5,000 meter championship races in mind that we could potentially rank as the top 5? I've got a little list here I can go through. You can rebut, or if you've got your own, hit me with them.
Well, I've got a little sort of freestyled a cappella narrative when you told me about it. I love this. This really gets my juices flowing. So I'm just going to focus from sort of the 70s onwards because prior to that, I'm sure the much older generation would have those races in their hearts as the great 5,000, but we don't have all day. So, okay, so if you look at the 1970s, for me, Lassie Vuren, his victory in 1976 to cap the 4th gold back-to-back 5 and 10, so 10-5 because they ran in the 10 first, 10-5, 10-5, and to beat our two Kiwi legends, Dixon and Quacks, when Quacks was Quacks a world record holder, or he did break a joke after,
and big favourite.
Yeah, and big favourite in the way that he beat them after those guys should have beaten them, particularly I believe Quacks, and they kind of stuffed it up. But to prove himself that great champion in the way he did it, to win his, I said 4th gold back to back was incredible. So that, that's sort of our little a pitch marker, so to speak. That's the context. So my great races from there on, Seda Wida winning the 1984 5,000 title. John Walker entered in that race, and I read John Walker's books, many books about John Walker. His camp believed, and rightly so, that 5,000 would kind of go in the manner of the 70s and 1980 5,000, which were 1320X races, where someone like Walker, who'd run a 1318 or 1319, would have had a great chance of outkicking the 5,000 men. But Oita was the first of the super milers to turn his hand to the 5,000. He won that race in 1305, and it was a ratcheting up or a changing of the paradigm in terms of the great milers entering into the 5,000. The next race that comes to mind, Dieter Baumann, the big kick down in 1992. So that was a pretty incredible race. But there's one race that's not very well known, and Jason, you probably know, and you've probably got notes, and you've probably done your homework, and you're going to be going, oh, why is he talking about it? But the 1993 World 5,000 meter championship race, to me, was, I went and watched it again last night because I remember being captivated by this as like a 13 or 14-year-old. So what happened in that race is you had a young Gebre Selassie who was just starting to assert himself as the big distance running star of his generation, which he did. But before he could do that, he had to take a few knocks along the way. And one of those was the 93 5,000 World Championship final. What happened in that race is actually, I encourage all the 8 or 12 or 15 viewers out there who actually stick past the 40-minute mark in our podcast to go and watch this. But it's an extraordinary race. So Ishmael Karoi takes it out. He runs a 60 high for the first lap. Then he ratchets it down to a 58. He's 2 flat through 800.
Yeah.
The pack then catches up to him, gradually reels him up to the 2,000 meter split at approximately 5:11. He then runs a 60 and a 61 to go 2:01 for his next 800 at the 2K mark. This is after having run 2 flat through 800 and being like 40 meters ahead. And then from there on in, they valiantly strive. Geb, and I think he mucked it up a bit because he sat on one of the Bayesa guys for ages and almost ran him down in the straight. And Bessa ran, Karori ran 13:02.75 at the time. I believe the record was still Sao Ueda's 12:58. Yeah. So it's basically world record pace in a championship, defeating Geb. And the way Geb kicks up that straight, you just know that Geb probably should have had more. But what a way to win against a guy who proved to be still is one of the all-time GOATs, if not the GOATs, to take him out. And then Karori, as a little footnote to that, went and won the 95 World Championship as well in a much slower race after basically doing nothing on the circuit for 4 years. So that was a pretty cool one. But my personal favorite, and I believe the highest level anyone's ever been at in a 5,000, including world records or Olympics, was the 2008 Olympic final. Kinesia Bekele with the, 357? Jason will have these stats, or 357
numbers.
Last mile. Was it 456 or 457 last 2000? But it wasn't just that. It was the fact that his finishing time was 12:57, which was one of the quickest. It was the Olympic record, I know that much, and it was probably only second to Eliud Kipchoge's 12:52.7 in 2003 World Champs. And it wasn't just the Olympic record. It wasn't just how fast the segment for the last mile or 2000 was. It was the fact he had Eliud Kipchoge, who had beaten him in that 2003 World Championship final, sitting on him. And the way he lit him up in that last lap with a 53.8 or 53.7 last 400, coming off the already high pace, the already protracted drive for home, and that little elfin grin on his face, little thumbs up to, I believe it was Josh Herman's on the infield, 150 to go, got this. And the way he just lit Kipchoge up, who was a legit guy, and went on to do everything in the marathon. But people forget he was an 18-year-old when he won the World 5,000 against both Bekele and El Garouge, who won the Olympics the year later. So that, for me, I've almost sort of got goosebumps to this day thinking about that race. That was, to me, was the epitome of 5,000 meter success.
And Shano, on top of that, not only did he just absolutely run the wheels off an incredibly strong athlete in Eliud Kipchoge, he absolutely blew the doors off Bernard Lagat, right?
Who was the world champion.
With tactics that were specifically designed to get rid of the 1,500 meter guys, because he was so distraught by losing that 2004 final to El Garouge, who obviously, as a 326 1,500 guy, had that anaerobic power. And he was like, there's no way that I'm going to lose the 08 final to, at that point, Lagat was, and it still is, he only 3/10 behind El Garouge in terms of his 1,500 PR at 326.3. So with tactics specifically designed to blow the doors off Lagat first, and then just take care of Kipchoge second. But
also, his tactics were necessary because Lagat was Bekele in that 07 race or not? I can't remember.
No, he didn't run. He didn't run at the World Champs for a while over 5K.
So Lagat won the 1,500, 5,000 double in 07, and it looked like he had ascended to the throne. It looked like he was going to be, a big threat in the 15 and 5. He wasn't right. I believe he was injured in 08, Lagat. But just to make you understand how necessary that those tactics were from Bekele, in 2009, Lagat still wasn't quite back to his best, but he almost beat in where was that, Jason, that World Champs in Germany? Berlin. Yeah,
yeah.
he almost beat Bekele in a much slower race, which shows Bekele was right if he had the tools at the time, the aerobic profile at the time, not to leave it to chance like that.
Totally. So Shana, you did get me, because my number one on the list was that Bekele 2008 performance, and I can actually go backwards real quickly. Some of the numbers from that race are mind blowing, as you pointed out. So a lot was made of Jakob's close in Paris, and this is no slight on Jakob. He is going to appear on this list here, but a lot was made of the final 3,000 meters of Jakob in Paris, 7:35 flat or 7:35 low. Obviously, that was a 13:13 race, though. 2008, Kennesisi Bekele 7:35.3 for that final 3,000 meters. Here's a big difference. He led 2,150 meters of it. Obviously, in the Paris final in 24, Jakob was not leading basically until the final 150, 200 of the race. 53.87 for that last lap. And as you pointed out, he started kind of celebrating with 110 meters to go, 120 meters to go. 150 to go. So that could have been even quicker. You were really, really close, as I would expect from a statistics guru like yourself. 4:56.97 for the final 2,000. And what else did we have here? Oh my gosh. Sub 13 in 2008, Shane, was still a really, really fast time, right? I think that's what now we don't appreciate, is that, you know, we look at how many sub 13s are run and we're just like, it seems like almost like the cusp or the borderline to being world class. Back in 2008, if you still ran under sub 13 in a golden league race or a diamond league race, it was seen as very, very fast. And here's a good one. 7:35, mate, for that final 3,000 meters. That is still faster than the New Zealand 3,000 meter record, right? I mean, crazy. That is crazy. That's faster than what Nick, our good friend Nick Willis, one of the all-time greats over the 1,500 and a fantastic, distance runner in its own right. That's even faster than what Nick's run for 3,000. Here's a good question for you, though, Shana, as well. How many runners do you think even now could run 7:35 for 3,000 meters with a 53.8 last lap? Do you reckon 10?
Yeah, can't be more than that.
Can't be more than that, right? Like, we know Jakob can, we know that Hocker can, we know Kerr, Nagoose, all those top guys in the 15. But, man, to still run under 54 seconds, it may not even be 10.
But and I encourage anyone out there who's a true nerd, a true aficionado like ourselves, to just get your little mug, get your flat white or your Earl Grey tea this morning and sit down and put the old 2008 final on the big screen, because it's not just the facts he runs 7:35 for the 53.8 last lap. He is cruising. He is breathing through his nose, and it's just like it was crazy stuff.
Okay, I'm going to go through these other ones quickly, round out a top five, and then maybe we've got one question and we can wrap it up, Shano. Number 2 for me on the list is still Coleman in 97. Right, absolute classic here, 8:05.15. I'll make sure I get the numbers right here. He famously then, after going through 3,000 meters, as I just mentioned, in 8:05.1, he drops 56.8 for the next lap, and then a 60.1. So he runs that 800 meter split, sort of in the middle of a 5K, often just over 8 minutes through 3K, and 156.9. It's hard to put into context how difficult that is to do, and then continue and not completely implode. That to me is special. That is something that we do not see every day.
Oh, it's the same as the Karori race.
It's the same as the Karori race.
2 flat for 800. Zaki is doing fartlek, and then he runs, he just sort of meanders a little bit in the middle. And then he runs, like I said, 202 or 201 from 5,000 to, from 2,000 to 2,800. And he reached 3K in 7:45. So it's a similarly stratospheric level. So keep going. Sorry, Dave.
Yeah. And I think as well, just putting into context, that 56.8 lap that Coleman runs, that's about at the threshold pace for Jakob that he wanted to run in that 2,000 meter record, right? So we saw how difficult it was for Jakob in a 1,500 meters to run. What did he run? 54.8 at the Olympics, and then maintain his level. That was enough to sort of compromise him enough in the back end of the race. But when he ran that 2,000 meter world record, it was clear that he was dedicated and hell bent on running 57.0 for each of the laps, because he gets through to 1,200 in exactly 2:48 before closing in 55:1. But that's just putting into context how fast and how difficult it is to run like a sub 57 in the middle of any race. That to me is just a massively underrated race in terms of how difficult it was, and pointed to the talent of Coleman. Number 3 on the list, hey man, Cole Hocker. So I mentioned earlier about Jakob in 2023 running 52:45 in that battle with Katia to win in a 13:11 race. Well, Cole Hocker ran 52:62 last year in Tokyo to win a 12:58.3 race. And on top of that, he had to go around 11 dudes in the final 400 meters to do it. That to me, once again, this is not about putting anybody down, but we're just looking at what are really special here. Number 4 for me, Kipchoge, massive championship best, right? And at the time, it was the 26th fastest time ever run. That was by anybody. So that was including multiples from Gebre Selassie, including multiples from Coleman, Bekele, etc., etc. He beat the 1500 world record holder, the 10,000 meter world record holder, 224.3 for the final kilo and 53.5 for the final lap in a 12:52 race. That's pretty special. And then at number 5, I had Jakob in Paris, just mentioned it, 7:35 flat for the final 3K, 4:55.3 for the final 2000, and 53.4 for the final lap. He beat the second fastest runner of all time and the 4th fastest. That rounds out my top.
It was a fun exercise. I think it could be part of a series, you know, when a novelist writes a New York Times bestseller and then they make it into a series. The 5,000, you know, I hadn't thought about it for a long time, but there's so many other like awesome races out there that we could talk about. The 99 world champs.
Yep.
Saleh Su. It was pretty cool because it was sort of the end of Coleman and Gibbs' dominance, and Hessig to come out and win the way he did in at the time championship record too, 12:58. That was a cool race. Yep. Then you've got there was another really good race I was going to mention as well. Shit, why have I lost the thought of it? It doesn't matter. But
I've got one for you. It may jog you in the meantime. Like one that's near and dear to us Antipodean, Shano. 1990, the Commonwealth Games. He's in the opening montage. Lloydie. How about like that may not be one of the fastest races you've ever seen. It was only 13:24, right? But in terms of an exciting 5,000 meter race, I would make the case that's probably the most exciting 5,000 meter race that has ever been run at a championship level.
Craig Mottram in 06 Com Games.
Craig Mottram, yes, versus Augustin Chogi.
Yes, another phenomenal race in the amphitheater, just the cauldron. That was the noise. I mean, you were there, Jason. That was
I was. And they reckon it's the loudest. And I mean, despite any cricket game that's been there, AFL game, that was probably the loudest the MCG's ever been. It was
raucous,
absolutely
of course.
Awesome. But back to that 1990 Com Games, I would just say for anybody who's not familiar with it, go back and watch the race. It's awesome. It's got John Ngugi in it, who was the reigning Olympic champion in 1988. He falls
all-time
after
world cross-country champion.
All-time world cross-country champion. He falls after like 1,000 meters. Then, I'm not going to spoil it for everybody, but it is definitely one of the most exciting races and one of the great pieces of Australian
commentary,
world athletics commentary there in the final 200 meters of that one.
The little guy in the little, it's Lloydie coming.
Yeah, Lloydie
here. I remember now the race I was going to talk about. So from a pure performance perspective, when Mo Farah won the 2015 World Championships, his last 1,000 meters was sub 2:20. I know it was a slow race. It was like 13:40 or 13:50 race, but
crazy.
Yeah, it was just what. And his last 600 was like 1:20. I mean, it was just wild stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it all begs the question of what is special. And again, like this is no hate towards Jakob at all, who already, by the way, if he never runs another race in his career, which he's going to, you know the point, but he's one of the all-time greats, even over 5,000 meters, right? He's a 2-time world champion. He's an Olympic champion. He's, run some of the most incredible races ever. But the real question was like, what are real special races? And I think we've seen a lot of kind of these sort of big kick down races, as you just mentioned, in sort of 13, 10 to 13, 20 races. But some of those other ones, when you really dive into them and look at the construct of what went on, even like, for example, that 97 race with Coleman, not an overly fast time, but just to drop. You don't see that every day. To drop like a 56 lap after 3K, that to me is what special is.
Renato Canova talked very cleverly for a long time on the boards back when I used to read them as a younger man about the importance of personality for a great champion. We talked earlier about Gout Gout. We talked about him having to go and compete against people or athletes he perceives as peers, and whether he can have that same confidence to go into those races to execute at the level his body will allow him optimally.
Yeah.
The 5,000, curiously, for many years, the field has, even though these guys can go out and run blindingly fast times in Europe, has catered to the great champions. For years, they catered to Farah, whereas as a kind of trade union, so to speak, they could have actually probably pushed it and at some point broken that up and defeated his run.
Yes.
The interesting point is, I think it's where you are leaning with, no one, similarly, no one has done that to Jakob. They've all catered to someone perhaps they perceive as a leader and a great champion.
Yeah.
1,500 though, maybe it's just the different people that gravitate to different events. At 1,500, it's why it's been so phenomenal to watch over the last 3 or 4 years, is very different. No one gives each other an inch, and everyone is in there muscling up to do their level best to try and upset the apple cart. That's why we've seen so many different champions. Interesting. Maybe there's something in that, the distance runner versus the middle distance runner. It's again, it's a talking point for the countless hours we'll spend on these topics in the future. But it's
that is a great point, because maybe it is just that 5,000. It's difficult to commit. I mean, like a 1,500 at the end of the day, what do you really need to commit to in a 1,500? Like 2.5, 3 minutes of difficulty? Like in a 5K, if you really wanted to, for example, make life difficult for a Jakob Ingebrigtsen or a Cole Hocker, it's like you've got to commit very early on, and that's a long way to go, right? Like I feel you've got to be, you can run a kind of a casual first mile, but then after that point, you really have to be committed to, say, running close to 5 minutes or low 5 for the next sort of 2K to put those guys into strife. And that's what we saw so brilliantly, and that's why we both have that race, the 2008 Olympic final, #1 on our list, because Bekele really committed to driving that pace. And I have a feeling he probably wanted to even go a little bit earlier than that, but he did it after 3K, led that final, just over 2,000 meters, and that's why it's such a masterpiece.
And puts it puts even more of a spotlight on how special that 93 World Champs performance by Ismail Karoui was, because like I said, like you just said, Jason, to have these guys like a Gebre Selassie in the mix, a great champion of the future, and these guys all knew each other from juniors and everything. They would have already known this guy was the guy, that hence why Ismail Karoui did what he did, to go out and blast out 2 flats, 7:45. What's that? Is that world record pace or just under? It would be, wouldn't it? Yeah.
It would have been very close to it, yeah.
Yeah, in the championship with no pacemaker, with 2 separate 2 flat splits within that first 3,000. I mean, we didn't, just to give you an idea how special that is, no one did that to Farah, and no one's done that to Jakob. So we've effectively got 15, 16 years where not a single athlete has done an Ismail Karoui, so to speak. So that's how special it was.
All right, Shano, getting close to wrapping things up here. Just a few other things. I thought I'd throw one thing at you. I see that Grand Slam Track is now officially out of bankruptcy. They have agreed to pay athletes 70% of what they owe them. But listen to this one. Only 14, not 40, 14% to the vendors. I know things are quiet at the moment, and this would be the sort of the time period when Grand Slam Track, if it had come back for a second season, would be going on. But, in particular, that number there, only 14% to the vendors, doesn't sound like we'll be seeing Grand Slam Track anytime soon. even though they are
So
in
can you just explain,
bankruptcy.
because I haven't read anything about that. So you're saying, okay, so are they continue or not though?
I've got no idea. I mean, it was always floated
must
that they
be.
would come back for a second season, but all I know is I just read this on Let's Run. The link to the article is that they've now, I guess, their bankruptcy period. I don't know how that works. Like, I guess that in order to get out of bankruptcy officially, you have to have a plan to pay your creditors. Is that right? The people that you owe money. And I believe that the agreement was 70% to athletes and 14% to vendors. But what a mess, man. And what a shame, because, certainly the next track league that wants to come along and, potentially use any of those people.
Yeah, I mean, it does make, and it's just what I do for a living, and I bore people with talking about it, but it does unfortunately make logical sense though, because
Right.
yeah, I mean the vendors are effectively funding their future selves in the hope that, so they would have gone to them. I'm guessing here, but I think it's a pretty good educated guess, and said, "We'll give you. We think we can still make it work. We'll to do that. The athletes are the one thing that are not a commodity that we can't replace. Those star athletes, so they need to get the lion's share of what's available to pay out.
Right.
And we will give you cents on the dollar, but we'll also give you the right to come along for the ride again. Or perhaps it was not even that, because maybe the vendors were so disgruntled they're like, we don't want to be involved with this guy.
Yeah,
These
that's
people,
like, we're done.
But then because everyone has to, I don't know the exact laws in the US, but everyone would have to vote on it. And if the athletes say, well, we'll get, we want 90%, say they started off at that point, and then it got to the point where 70, but if the vendors couldn't get a single dollar without the athletes getting, say, a certain amount, then 14% of the pool is better than zero, because they needed the agreement of the athletes to actually be able to get a dollar. There's a great experiment, a social science experiment with two human beings, and there's $100 on the table, and the person holding the $100, one person holds $100 and the other person has to choose an amount. It has to be greater than $1 as to, and they have to agree. And logic would tell you that the person who has to pick will pick the dollar. So because it's better to get a dollar than get nothing at all. But when they did this experiment quantitatively, it turned out the number was around $22 or $23. And what the author's hypothesis from that was that humans don't just care about things in the abstract in terms of, and we're not very logical, because the logical thing is, accept your dollar, because without agreement you can't get anything. It actually, comparison is a huge part of our psyche. So they're sitting there going, okay, that's a fair amount, even though I couldn't have got anything. And it would be a little bit like that with these guys. I think that's the bartering that would have gone on here. They would have been going, what's fair? The athletes were going, well, we need, most of our money, and the what do you call it, the TV agencies in the position of the person with the dollar going, okay, well, I need to take my 14 cents on the dollar here, because otherwise I'm going to get zero.
Well, I hope they didn't pay the drone company that did the footage, the wonky footage around the track. Hope they didn't get anything, because it was terrible.
Well, maybe it was a weighted average, and maybe some of the networks got 25% to the dollar, and the drone company got like a performance sort of ratioed share of that.
$25 and an Arby's gift card. All right, Shano, that was fun. Good pod. Anything else from your side?
Let's keep that nostalgic stuff going, and that gets me out of bed on a Sunday morning. Good. I enjoyed it.
There's actually a mailbag question from Kerr, but we'll touch on that next week anyway.
You can fire it up if you want.
Well, no, it was a Jakob Ingebrigtsen one, like just about coming back from injury, and do you think we'll see it again?
Let the ghost. Just do it. Let the ghost of Kerr haunt us.
All right. Okay. To finish it off, this was a text that came through from our great buddy Kerr. We're going to get him on the pod one day to get his POV. I think he was actually talking to you, Deo, because he was back in New Zealand.
He was.
We were talking about Jakob. and how
I
we
took
actually
him
want him back.
I'm talking
Because
to
he's
his part.
awesome to watch.
The death chamber.
Oh, he's awesome to watch, but just thinking about more on this, why can't he return to 326, 327 form and perhaps have a crack again at the mile record, if not the 1500? Our dear mate Nick Willis PR'd running 329 at age 32 in 2015. I might be wrong, but it was his all-time best 1500. You're not wrong, there it was. Maybe Jakob won't, but there's a glimmer of hope for all the JI fans out there that he actually does get back for another hot season and sticks it. Maybe a mailbag question. What do you reckon, Shane? We have just spoken ad nauseum about the 5,000 meters and a lot about Jakob as well. What do you reckon the chances are that he gets back into 326, 327 shape?
Not good, but I believe that is more because of factors to do with what we're hearing, seeing out of his camp.
Right.
Do I believe, though, that Kerr has a good argument in terms of historical precedent with if he wasn't having the issues and perhaps hasn't had the mindset change with the young one and being famous and successful from such a young age? Yes, I do. And Kerr and I were actually talking about that when he messaged you, because not only did Nick Willis run his fastest time quite a bit older, John Walker also, as you'd know, Jace, ran his faster mile. The difference being, though, number one, Nick was not quite at that world record holder level. Walker was, but then things had moved on a bit when Walker got to the 3:49.0 with the advent of Coe, Cram, Awita, all those sort of people.
Yeah.
So it's.
Well, to piggyback on what you're saying there, I think a big difference with Willis, with Nick, is that he was also relative, as we know quite well. Nick had a great career and was able to have such great longevity because he was relatively undertrained as a young athlete, just running off pure talent. He wasn't doing a lot of mileage and a lot of work. And also as well, when Nick started, he had a few problems with his calf muscles, etc. Ironically, very similar to what John Walker did, which actually sort of limited the amount of work that they were able to do. The other point here too, I would make, Shano, especially around Nick, around John Walker, and even Sebastian Coe, who of course famously ran his 1500 meter PR way after what you would have thought was his peak, because he ran his 1500 PR in 86, right? 329,
329.4 or
329.60 something. The difference there is that you have to ask yourself, that's great that they ran their PRs there. Same with Walker in the mile, 3:49.08, way after the first time that he'd broken 350. But was that really indicative of what their potential limits or their ceilings were at their peak? So, for example, Coe running 3:29.6 late in his career, to me, that's not an example of, hey, a guy who sort of prolonged his peak all the way through and finally tapped out towards the end of his career, because he didn't have a big career after 1986. To me, that's more an example of, hey, this guy was probably capable of running 3:28 flat in the peak of his career, and things didn't just go his way. And we know, we can almost say that for a fact with Walker because of his injury stuff. I've got a feeling that even Nick could have run much faster than 3:29.6 when he was in his later 20s, but again, he had a few injury issues. And so that's where I think it slightly differs from Jakob, because I've got a feeling that he's already come really close to the peak of his powers at 3:26.7, 7:17, 4:43 for 2K. That would just be my difference. So yeah, glimmer of hope potentially, but I don't think that that's an apples to apples situation. What do you think?
No, it's good.
Yeah. So anyway, Kerr, I mean, yeah, I think there's a good opportunity. Here's how I think this is going to play out for Jakob, and then we can wrap it up, Shane. If you've got a rebuttal, let me know. I think that he's going to come back. I do think he will be competitive again, but I think we have seen the best of his days. I think that this was the back end of his sort of career peak window. I think he opened it in 23 and 24, 25 and 26. I think it's just been written off to injury. I don't think you can just say, well, he just prolonged it 2 years. I think there's a lot of energy that it takes to recover from injury, and a lot of emotional stress and toll. So I don't think it's quite that simple. I think we're going to see him come back and still be a global player, but I think the days of sort of those glory halcyon days of him dominating races the way that we saw is probably over, and I think that's okay, because it doesn't matter if I said this earlier, if he never runs another race, he's still going to be one of the all-time greatest runners that we've ever seen.
The human body and mind, but the human body is an incredible thing. I watched a documentary. I've actually watched it before, probably 10 years ago, about Marco Pantani on Netflix. Is it on Netflix or one of those channels? Anyway, it's Prime Video. That's what it's on. It's just utterly superb. And so I'd forgotten that Marco Pantani had that terrible accident descending during one of the races in 94, 95. And and he was, I was watching with my partner who's a doctor, and we're saying, I said, was that serious? Because sometimes she'll see things on TV about someone, she'll be like, oh, that's nothing, they're just hamming that up, like it's just like, look, like, she goes, yeah, that was huge. They had to like what's called plate his like leg back together, basically. So it's held together by a bunch of pins and glue. And to come back and win the Giro Tour double, and people can say, oh, but he was on drugs. Well, so was the whole bloody sport, back in the 90s, cycling. So the human body is an incredible thing. I think the bigger issue with Jakob is whether it's not an issue if he doesn't care, but I mean, the bigger issue for us as fans in terms of whether we're going to see any more historical exploits out of him are whether his mind wants to drive himself in the manner that he used to. And if he does, I think he probably could run as fast again. I do believe that it won't happen overnight, but I think if he was so determined that it mattered so much to him as the singular focus in his life, I reckon he could do it. However, that's a lot to ask from someone who's already achieved what he's achieved in his life. So, I mean, for the average person, it's like, I know for myself with my business, if you have a good period, you make a bit of money and you get a bit comfortable, you're like, oh, my life's pretty nice. I don't have to go too hard. So all these people that we put up there, and we go, wow, we really want you to feel hungry and desperate and probably a bit sad and lonely to drive ourselves. So us guys in our like nice little couches can go, oh, there's a 12:33. Yes, it's great. Like, he's not thinking like that. It's come from an unconscious place of whether he wants to still be that guy that's chasing records, and only he knows that.
Like all us, or like all the golf fans that want Tiger Woods to come back, and they don't mind that he hits 1,000 balls a day in absolute pain and has to stuff himself with painkillers to the point where he flips his car and gets himself in trouble. Kind of like that.
Yeah. Very similar to that.
All right, Shano, great pod. We'll get you out of here on that one. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'm going to enjoy the rest of mine. You around next week?
I certainly will be, mate.
Awesome. All right, we'll figure out something to talk about as always. Shano, pleasure. Have a good one, and we'll catch you next time. See you, mate.